بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Inshallah, we're going to begin the second session of love, marriage and family by looking at the issue of compatibility in Islam, and also at the same time we'll also be glancing on page 5, selection of a partner, and also some qualities which we should adhere to when it comes to choosing a spouse, whether a brother looking for a wife or a sister looking for a husband. Now I'm just going to firstly look at the slide which is in front of us, compatibility. Now the beauty of our deen or our religion is that Islam stresses that marriage is a lifetime relationship. The key word is lifetime. And unfortunately what we have nowadays is that brothers and sisters, there is a lack of what we call in Arabic istiqamat. Istiqamat means, doing something continuously. It's actually a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he encouraged that whatever you do in life, do it regularly and do it all the time. وَإِنْ قَلَّ, even though it may be little. So in other words, if you've got a habit of praying tahajjud, then you shouldn't be, you just wake up one night for tahajjud and then that's it for the next 2-3 months. Pray tahajjud every single day. Do it regularly. Even though if it means just praying 2 rakat salah, wa in qalla, that is more better than one-off praying 8 rakats of tahajjud and then there's a gap for 2-3 months, 6 months, and then you think about tahajjud again. So what I'm trying to say is that in Islam, or Prophet ﷺ in particular, he encouraged, when we do something, when we start something, we do it all the time. But as I was saying that, unfortunately we find nowadays with our brothers and with our sisters, that there is a lack of patience, lack of istiqamat. As soon as they go through a problem, then that's it. Husband thinks about divorcing his wife. Wife thinks about separating. Husband thinks about somebody else. Wife, starts questioning that, have I made the right decision? So what Islam has done is that Islam has said that, look, marriage and nikah, it's a lifetime relationship. It's not a 1-year thing. It's not a 2-year thing. It's not like, okay, we've had one son, that's more than enough, let's move on to pastures new. No, it's actually a lifetime relationship. Now, to make sure that the nikah and the marriage lasts a lifetime, these things about compatibility and these issues is something which is very, very important. You need to basically, when you meet the suitor, you need to make sure that whether the sister, and similarly vice versa, when sisters are meeting brothers, they have to make sure that whether this person is the right person, whether you have something in common. That's the main thing. Like whether the boy and the girl are on the same wavelength. So common, wavelength, compatibility, these are the key words. As I was saying before that, even psychologists as well, they also say that for a marriage to last, the husband and wife, they need to have something in common. They need to have something in common. So whether it's like they both happen to be doctors, so they got something in common. Okay, they know where each one is looking at, where each one, when they talk about something, they know, okay, my wife's a doctor, she's looking at it from that, your interests are the same. Or whether you have a case that the husband is an alim, a scholar, and his wife is also a scholar. So they got something in common there. So when they talk, they're looking at it from an Islamic perspective, they're looking at it from a perspective of from the Quran and from the Hadith. They've got something in common. And where the husband and wife don't have anything in common, they could get married, the marriage will be done. But we'll see that after a few years, the marriage will collapse. The marriage will go through difficulties and will go through problems. So just say, for example, if, say, the husband is a scholar and his wife happens to be a doctor. I'm just giving you an example. Now, obviously, the husband's got his way of thinking, like, okay, wife should be like this, parda, hijab, so on and so forth. But the wife may be a bit more relaxed in the hijab and parda because she's a doctor, she's a lawyer. Obviously, in certain things she may not or can't do the proper full hijab. So then obviously that leads to a clash, that leads to a difficulty there. So what this particular section or what this slide, the slides which are going to come up is going to tell us is that it's very, very important that whoever we marry, they have to be compatible with us. They are on the same wavelength as us. They have same interests and what we share is something which is similar. I was speaking to the brother yesterday that he mentioned that sometimes what happens is brothers and sisters, they'll meet and because the brother just sees the sister wearing a hijab, wearing a headscarf, he thinks, oh, subhanAllah, she's so pious. So then what happens, they get married, but then when they get married, then that's when problems start. They haven't discussed issues about children. They haven't discussed issues about work, or they haven't discussed issues about finance. Just because she's wearing a headscarf, he thinks, oh, she's so pious and so religious, I'm going to get married to her. So what I'm trying to say is that when we meet the sister, so it's very important that we ask certain questions. Obviously, I've got a list of some questions which we can ask. Similarly, sisters need to ask the brothers questions about, deen, piety, about whether they're practicing or not. Certain other issues about how do they want her to be at home, in terms of is she allowed to have a career, or is she going to be at home, or these kind of things. So these things need to be clarified and ironed out at the beginning of the marriage, or in other words, at your first meeting. If it's not clarified and then you get married, then these issues are then raised in the marriage, where at that time no one is then willing to budge. The husband not willing to budge because he's saying, no, well, I don't want you to work. And obviously if the husband was to now lower himself and say, okay, you can work, then he thinks, oh, I've lost my authority here. And then obviously the wife doesn't want to budge, she wants to work. So then you have this kind of standoff at home where husband is saying to his wife, you can't work. Wife is demanding, no, I want to work. It's my freedom. I want to work. I want to go out and meet my friends. I want to interact and so on. Again, there's nothing wrong with women working. We'll touch on this later. But I'm just saying that it's like a common problem which husbands and wives have. Now, if this issue was talked about when they met each other, so when they firstly met, and the husband said, look, I don't want you to work, and then the wife kind of obviously understood where the husband was coming from, and she said, okay, you know what, yeah, okay, I won't work, I'll get married to you, but I won't work, I'll look after the kids, and so on and so forth, then there won't be any problems. So what I'm trying to say is that, obviously, we're going to be looking at two topics. We're going to be looking at compatibility issue, and then we'll move on to the selection of a partner issue. Now let's have a look at the slide which is in front of us firstly. Compatibility. Now I mentioned there at the top that compatibility is looked at from the girl's side. Now, what do I mean? Basically, the scholars have said that compatibility, we look at it from the girl's side, that whether this girl or this sister, whether that man she is marrying is compatible for her. So we don't look at whether this girl is compatible for this man. We look at it from the girl's point of view, that whether this man is compatible for her. Whether this man is compatible for her. Now you may be thinking, why don't we look at it from the man's point of view? Now the reason why we don't look at it from the man's point of view is because it's not that harmful, or it's not that difficult, or it's not as problematic that if the husband happens to be very intelligent or very rich, and his wife happens to be poor or from a lower background or from a lower class, that's not of a big problem. But the actual problem is when the girl or the sister happens to be from a rich background, happens to be from an intellectual background, happens to be from a high background, she then marries someone who's lower than her. That's where the problem arises. Now, why do you think, what's the problem here? Why is there the problem? The problem basically is that men, as we're going to look at later, they are caretakers of the wives. So in other words, men have authority over their wives. So if a man is from a high background, rich background, intellectual background, and his wife is from a lower background, not that clever or intellectual as the husband, then it's not a problem. Why? Because the husband's got the authority anyway, so he could tell his wife, do this, do that. But the problem arises where the wife, if she happens to be from a high background, intellectual background, and the husband on this side is from the low background, then the husband doesn't have any authority over her. He does Islamically, but if he was to tell his wife, can you do this for me? The wife will say, well, look, I'm the breadwinner here. I'm a doctor, I'm the lawyer. You should be doing the household chores, not me. You should be cleaning, not me. So that's why it's important that we look at compatibility from the girl's side. So we then ask the question whether this man is equal or compatible with her. Okay, so this is all subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen. Everything fits in. Sometimes when we really, how can that be? Why is compatibility looked at from the girl's point of view? It's because what I just explained. Yeah, because if she was too intellectual, now there's nothing wrong with being intellectual or being from a high background, but the husband has to be also from the same level as well. Because if he's from a lower level, then he won't be able to have any authority over his wife. Even though Islamically he does, but we know in practice it's not going to work. So for that reason, the Sharia says that the man has to be compatible with her, or if even better, the man happens to be higher than her, then only then obviously the marriage and the nikah will last. So that's what I mean by compatibility is looked at from the girl's side. And it's also the right of the girl's family, according to Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi, and Imam Ahmad. Okay, what do I mean by that? That it's a right of the girl's family, or it's a right of a girl. In other words, just say there's a girl, she's actually from a very rich background, she's from an intellectual background, but just say for argument's sake, she wants to marry someone from a low background. And she's happy with it, her parents are happy with it, then in such a situation, the nikah will be valid. Because what I'm trying to say, it's the right of the girl's family. In other words, it's her right. So if she wants to now give that right up and wants to marry someone who's lower than her, that's fine, that's okay. Because there's another Imam whose name is Imam Malik. You can make this note if you want, that Imam Malik, he says it's a right of Allah. Compatibility is a right of Allah. What does that mean? It means here that if a girl was to marry someone who was lower than her, that marriage will not be done. because it's a right of Allah. But obviously, the three Imams there, they say that no, it's a right of the girl, which means that if she wants to give it up and she doesn't want to, say for example, she doesn't mind marrying someone who's lower than her, then that's fine, the nikah and the marriage will be intact and valid. Okay? So that's what we mean by compatibility is looked at from the girl's side. Now what we'll do, we're just going to look at some of the rulings which are mentioned on the slide there. The first rule which I want to mention, firstly we're going to be looking at some rules about compatibility in ethnicity or lineage-wise. Because again, it's like a common question which people ask, and then afterwards we'll move forward. Okay, now the first point here on the slide is that in matters of lineage, the lineage of the father is considered and not the mother. Okay? Now lineage means nasab, i.e., in other words, if the father is an Arab, the son he has would be considered to be an Arab. Why? Because we follow our father's footsteps. We are subservient to our father. So if the father is an Arab, the son would be considered as an Arab, his daughter would be considered as Arab. So when it comes to lineage side, we look at it from the father's point of view. Now there is one exception where in one thing we don't look at it from the father's side. There's one thing where we don't necessarily look at it from the father's side or from the father's point of view. And does any brothers know what that thing is where we don't look at it from the father's point of view? Okay. No. Even when they're divorced, it's still attributed to the father. Okay, I'll just tell you the answer. The answer is when it comes to religion. When it comes to religion. So in other words, just say you have a scenario, and we look at that, inshallah, we look at marrying non-Muslims and Jews and Christians. So just say you have a scenario where, just say for argument's sake, remember this marriage is not allowed, but it happens. I just dealt with a case recently as well where the man happened to be non-Muslim, i.e. Christian, and the wife was a Muslimah. She was a Muslim. Obviously their marriage isn't done, but they got married. Now they had a child as well, they had a son as well. So now that son would not be subservient to his father. Who would he be subservient to? The mother. Why? Because she's a Muslim. So now in that case, if the son was to pass away, then that son would be treated as a Muslim. In other words, we'll give him janazah, kafan, burial, buried in a Muslim cemetery, so on and so forth. Okay? So remember, that is one exception where we don't follow the father, we just follow whoever happens to be the best deen, khayrul adyan, whatever the best deen or the best religion is. So obviously Islam in that case, so we just follow who's the believer at that time, and that son would be following the mother in that situation. Okay? But generally speaking, that rule number one is in matters of lineage, the father is considered not the mother. Now that takes me on to rule number two, that all Arabs, or if you want to use like words such as Sayyids even, Sayyids are those who are from the Khandan or from the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So all Arabs or Sayyids are considered to be equal to each other, like compatible to each other. So what does that mean? It means that if an Arab girl, she wants to get married, she should get married to an Arab boy. A Sayyid girl wants to get married, she should get married to a Sayyid boy. That's like compatibility for Arabs. Yep. Then it goes on to say, rule number three, besides Arabs, all other ethnic groups such as Bangladeshis, Pakistanis are considered to be one, the same. So in other words, if a Bangladeshi girl wants to get married to a Pakistani boy, that would be allowed. That would be allowed. Islamically, nothing wrong with it, nothing haram, nothing unlawful. A Pakistani girl here wants to get married to a Bangladeshi boy, an Indian boy, that would be allowed, that would be permissible. Okay? The reason I'm mentioning it is that sometimes you get some parents where their daughters run off with if they're like, run off with a Bangladeshi boy, with an Indian boy, and they say, oh, this nikah is haram and so on. And they give a fatwa themselves, or it's a haram nikah. No, it's not haram, the nikah, as long as they did the proper Islamic nikah, witnesses and offered acceptance, as we will look at later, that nikah is valid. It's only obviously the problem, obviously with Arabs and so on, because they are from the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam side, so they have a bit more superiority over non-Arabs, over Ajmis. So therefore, Arabs, generally speaking, they are considered to be compatible for each other. And besides Arabs, other groups, whether Gujaratis, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, other ethnic groups, they are considered to be equal to each other. Now, if you could just add on a ruling here for rule number 2 and 3, if you could just add this on. It doesn't mean, what I've just explained to you here is what we call compatibility. What I mean compatibility means like, it's best that it is like this. Like, it's best that an Arab girl marries an Arab boy. And we kind of see this because, every culture has something, there's something specific or something of that culture which we as Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, or someone from the Indian subcontinent, we may find it to be a bit weird or odd. So like, Arabs, they do certain things. So we may find it to be odd. I'm sure we do certain things like the Arabs looking at it think, that's odd. So what I'm trying to say is that it's again based on that compatibility thing. Yeah? That, and even to a lesser extent, that if, say, for example, there's a Bangladeshi girl and she wants to marry a Bangladeshi boy, like she's made that intention, or the parents want her to marry a Bangladeshi boy. Now, why are they doing that? They're doing it with the intention of compatibility. That they think that, look, if my girl was to marry a Pakistani boy, there's certain things which Pakistanis do that Bangladeshis may find it odd. And similarly, vice versa. Certain like customs, you could say, certain things which Bangladeshis may think, that's odd, we should do it like this. The Pakistani brothers, they may think, no, there's nothing wrong with that. So again, it's all based on compatibility. That's why, if it's done with the intention of compatibility, then it is actually recommended that you get married within. Within meaning, like Pakistani boys getting married to Pakistani girls, Bangladeshi girls getting married to Bangladeshi boys. If it's done with that intention of compatibility, that their wavelength is the same, their mentality is the same, then obviously it is recommended. And if you want to narrow it down even further, you can make a note of this. Again, sometimes we in our community find that cousin brothers, cousin sisters getting married. Now again, if it was done with the intention because of the compatibility thing, because of the compatibility, because when you look at it, if you get married to your cousin sister, you kind of know what she is, like with something you've grown up with her, you know what you're getting. And sometimes people, they want to go for the safest option when it comes to marriage, rather than trying their hand out, say, to a girl who's from another background. So because obviously remember, marriage is all about, the lifetime relationship, isn't it? So again, if there's a brother and he actually wants to marry his cousin sister because he's grown up with her, he knows what's he getting with her, he knows that she's, she wears the scarf, she's pious, he knows that she's not going to rock the boat. In other words, like, if certain things happen because his cousin sister, Ben, she's not going to do anything, she's not going to ask for a divorce or something, and if it's done with that intention, then again, that is also recommended as well. So it's all based on basically what is compatible. Looking at it from our own ethnic background, obviously we do have certain differences, but generally speaking, it's kind of like the same. You know, like Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, you know, it's kind of like the same. You know, certain things, you know, we'll find acceptable, but Arabs may not, and vice versa. So that's why the scholars have mentioned that obviously other ethnic groups, they are considered to be compatible for each other. Obviously, if you want to narrow it down slightly, and if you want to, like, as I was explaining, like you'd rather prefer your daughter to marry a Pakistani boy, or your daughter to marry a a Bangladeshi boy, because she happens to be Pakistani herself or Bangladeshi herself. Why? Because of the intention of compatibility, then that is recommended. Or like I gave another narrower example of cousin brothers and cousin sisters. You want to get married to your wife because you know what you're getting and the issue of compatibility there. So again, in that situation, that will also be recommended as well. Okay, now we're just going to move on to the next point, point number 5. Compatibility is also needed or should also be taken into consideration when it comes to piety and when it comes to age. Piety, taqwa, and when it comes to age. Okay, now what do I mean by piety here? Piety means in terms of religiousness. So like the girl, she wants to get married to someone, so herself or her family should make sure that the boy she's marrying is kind of religious, is very similar to her. Now the reason why that is important from a girl's side looking at, it's not as that important, say, from the husband's side. In other words, if the husband's religious and he's getting married to a girl who's not that religious, obviously she may be doing the basics, but she's not that religious, it's not that much of a big of a problem. Why? Because as I explained before, husband's got authority, so he could easily mold his wife. Okay, and alhamdulillah, we see many examples where brothers, they did get married to sisters who weren't that practicing, but alhamdulillah, the brothers worked on them, effort in them, you know, took them for lectures, talks, bayan, and slowly, the wives are now under their level, like around their level, if that makes sense. Now the problem is that if you have a wife who's religious, like practicing, and she wants to marry someone who's not that practicing. Now the danger is, over time, because the husband has authority, over time the wife's going to get influenced. Over time, she will get influenced. Even though her intention may have been good, that okay, I'll marry this drug dealer, but I'll marry him, you know, just for like, I could change him and make him into, you know, practicing and so on. Now, her intention may have been good, but then what invariably happens is that over time she gets affected. And that's in general, by the way, I'm just talking about husband-wife relationship. That's general with bad friends. Anyone, you know, you got some bad groups outside. Now you want to mix and mingle with them. Now your intention may have been good at the beginning. Look, I want to mix and mingle with them. I want to take them off the streets and bring them into the masjid. But what happens is that if there's quite a few of them and you're just working by yourself, then over time they're going to have an effect on you. You may not realize it. Yeah, you may think, no, well, I still got my beard, I still got my topi and my qameez and my jubba. But in terms of, like, inherently, through the hearts, they will have an effect on you. So over time, it will have an effect. So similarly with that sister as well, if she's practicing and pious and she's marrying someone who's not that practicing and pious, over time, it will have an effect on her. And over time, what will happen is that that sister was wearing the hijab, you know, a few months later, or even say a year or so later, the hijab comes off, you know, 2-3 years later, she was a 5 times namazi, you know, praying salah every day. The namaz has gone now, she does 1 prayer a day, she does 2 prayers a day, and then over time it has an effect. So that's why the Sharia has said that compatibility is needed when it comes to piety. And also in terms of age. Also in terms of age. In other words, if the woman or the girl, let's say she's in her 20s, and she's marrying someone who's in her 60s, 70s, like again happens in our society, where old men will go to Pakistan or Bangladesh and they'll get married to young girls. Now, again, you tell me, where on earth there's going to be compatibility there? That man is old enough to be her granddad. How on earth, how can there be some kind of compatibility there? Especially, it doesn't make sense. There won't be hardly any compatibility between, even like, if you get married to a girl in Pakistan, Bangladesh now, who's in her 20s, nowadays, the girls even there, they're very up to date as well. They've got their iPhones and they know everything. They're on WhatsApp and everything. They are proper up to date. So if a guy who's in his 60s and 70s marries a girl, there's no compatibility there. So that's also very important as well. There has to be age is also very important. Also, there's nothing wrong with a wife being slightly older than the husband, or even a few years older than the husband. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as the same era, the same thoughts, mentality, thinking and so on, then that's okay. But if it's a big of a difference, 30, 40 year difference, then there's going to be a problem. Now obviously some of you may be thinking, or sisters upstairs may be thinking, well, Prophet ﷺ got married to Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, as the hadith explains in Sahih al-Bukhari, that Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha was 6 when the actual marriage took place. And obviously she then went on to live with Rasulullah ﷺ from the age of 9. And when Prophet ﷺ married Sayyidah Aisha, he was 53 years old. Okay, so basically what we can derive from that hadith, look, there's a 40-year difference between Prophet ﷺ and Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha. So how did that nikah work out? Actually, not only did that nikah work out, it was one of the best nikahs. Rasulullah loves Hazrat Aisha and her so much, and similarly vice versa. So how did that work out? Now, it worked out because of Prophet ﷺ's amazing akhlaq and characteristics. Because of his akhlaq and manners, that Sayyidah Aisha was just had so much love for Rasulullah ﷺ. And Rasulullah ﷺ had so much love for Hazrat Aisha. Now regarding that question, regarding that issue about age, yeah, fair enough, if there is a guy who's in his 50s and 60s and he wants to marry a girl in his 20s, if he could display the manners and the akhlaq of Rasulullah ﷺ, then there's nothing wrong with that marriage. It will work out. But unfortunately what we have nowadays is that men who are in the 60s and they get married to 20-year-olds, they are just doing it for one reason, and that is just for desire. They have no intention of, affection or love or manners or akhlaq or taking it out. It's more basically, she's a young girl, let's fulfill my desires with her until, my time is up and I'm going to leave in the next few years. So until my time is up, let me just use her as much as possible. Now, unfortunately, that is the actual intention. That's why many people in the 60s will go to Pakistan, will go to Bangladesh to get married. So if your intention is that, obviously the nikah is not going to work, the marriage is not going to work. And sometimes, obviously, the women who are in the 20s, they get married to someone who's in the 60s because they know that, okay, in a few years' time he's going to pass away, I'll take his inheritance, I'll come to this country, so obviously it works out financially better for me. So obviously if your intention, that the girl's intention is that, and the guy's intention is just basically lust and desires, obviously the nikah is not going to work out. Yeah, it's not going to work. But obviously Rasulullah ﷺ's intention when he got married to Hazrat Aisha, or Aisha radiallahu anha when she got married to Prophet ﷺ, their intention wasn't lust. Their intention wasn't finance or money or beauty, whatever. Their intention was love and affection, and that's why Prophet ﷺ loved Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha, and Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha loved Rasulullah ﷺ. Okay, now this takes me on to the last point here. I use the word girl, but obviously applies for boys as well. That can a sister or even a brother born and brought up in this country or in the UK, marry someone from Pakistan, from India, from Bangladesh? It's more like a question I posed. So let me ask, obviously, the brothers a question. Like, what do you guys think? Bearing in mind what I mentioned about compatibility and certain things. Like, first question I ask is that marriage, do you think it will be allowed or not?
I think it would be allowed, but the traditions and culture would be different from each other, so
yeah,
it might not work out.
Ismail, were you going to say the same thing, or?
I was going to say that it'd be slightly more compatible if there was a man from the UK and a woman from Pakistan, rather than a man from Pakistan and a woman from the UK.
Yeah, there isn't, like, that's why I asked the opinions of the brothers, because there isn't a kind of yes or no answer. There isn't actually a clear answer. Obviously, the answers the brother gave there, and also Ismail at the back, that would be the answer which I would give for this particular question. And I'll just give you an example. It's all based on compatibility, yeah? Because what this section is about being compatible with each other. Now, just say, for example, there may be someone, you may have been born in this country, but his mentality is of I'm not sure if I'm offending, freshie mentality, if that makes sense. So basically, he's of a back home kind of mentality, yeah? Even though he's been brought up in this country, he's like, he's one of those guys like watching, love like, local programs of all these Bangla TV or ATN, these like the Young Sky or, QTV, whatever, he's one of those guys, yeah? So he knows what's happening in Bangladesh, he knows the politics in Pakistan, he knows what's happening, yeah? He's proper tuned with Pakistan, culture, politics, saying that Bangladeshi boy is proper well tuned with the Bangladeshi politics, culture and so on. Now obviously for that person to go back to Pakistan, Bangladesh and get married, I think that would be more recommended. Yeah, because obviously if he tries to get married to someone in this country with a bit more intellectual background, then there will be a problem.
Sorry, I know it's not a question, but what would you say, Chef, to the kind of percentage of danger, in particular for sisters, now brought up in this society, for them to go back and marry? Is there a safety or is there more of a danger? What would you recommend in that scenario?
Okay, I'll mention that. Okay, so that's the first scenario. Like someone who's been, even though he may have been born in this country, but if he's well tuned with the situation back home, then obviously it'd be more recommended for him to get married to someone in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh. The same also applies for, a girl as well, a sister as well. That even though she may have been born in this country, but she's been brought up in such a way that she hasn't lost her roots. In other words, so she knows everything about Pakistan, she knows everything about Bangladesh. So again, for that particular sister, again, it will be recommended that she goes back to Bangladesh, Pakistan, and she gets married. Now this question here, the one I posed, I was looking at it more from someone who's been totally like brought up, born and bred, as they say, according to the Western culture, according to the culture of this country. So in other words, studied in this country, graduated in this country, never ever visited Pakistan. So we look at it from both angles there, whether a girl or a boy. So never ever visited Pakistan, never ever visited Bangladesh, have nothing common whatsoever with Pakistan, Bangladesh, but obviously their parents happen to be from there. But besides that, nothing. Even to the extent that even the food as well. Just give you an example. Even the food that, the roti and, the chawal and so on, the guy doesn't like it, the girl doesn't even like eating it. She rather prefers the fish and chips or chicken and chips, which may have horse meat inside there. So basically, that's what they want, and that's what they've been brought up with, horse meat. No, just joking. Like they say to me, chips and chicken and so on. So anyway, now she's been coerced, or she's been told, or the guy's been told, look, you need to go back to Pakistan, Bangladesh, and get married. So now regarding this fifth question, or this issue here, the answer will be that it is best in that situation that they don't go and get married. Obviously, if they do, marriage will be done. So just for example, even though she's been brought up in this country, or the boy's been brought up in this country, but she goes back to, or he goes back to Pakistan, Bangladesh and gets married, don't worry, the nikah will be done. But looking at it from a compatibility point of view, the answer will be no. It's not recommended. Now, why isn't it recommended? Because as I said, they're like two different societies. Yeah, two different kind of mentalities. If the guy's been brought, or just say if the girl's been brought up in this country, and just take an example of a guy from Pakistan or Bangladesh who hasn't actually studied anything, he just lives in the villages, just like herds the goats or the sheep and so on, and now he is marrying a girl who's a law graduate, or she's a doctor from the UK. There's no compatibility between the two. There's like night and day difference between the two. Now, in that situation, such a nikah is fraught with danger. As Brother mentioned, there's too many difficulties, there's too much danger in that particular nikah. Even certain things, I'll give you an example of certain things where if the boy's being brought up in this country, and as I said that he just eats like chips and these kind of things, and now he's marrying someone who hasn't even heard of chips, or hasn't heard of like chicken and chips. The only thing she knows is dal chawal, or something naan or whatever. That's the only thing she knows, or that's the only thing she can make. Now if the husband says, well, I want chips and something, and she goes, what on earth is chips? And little things like that leads to problems. Now again, there may be someone thinking, oh, it's only minor, you could just get it from the shops outside. But it's not about getting it from the shops from outside. It's these little things then play a big part, because as soon as it starts, little things where you can't, when these little things start, then what happens is that they kind of add on, and it kind of escalates. And then a time will come when the guy or the husband will get so frustrated that he adds up, he gets so frustrated, thinks, what, I'm out of here, I'm going to leave and so on. And then he thinks about divorcing her, getting married to somebody else, and so on and so forth. Now, a question which one of the uncle asked on the back row is that we have some problems within our community where unfortunately many of these sisters who come from Pakistan, Bangladesh, obviously the husbands divorce them, or the husband leaves home. Actually, sometimes doesn't even give them divorce. He just because he's had enough, he can't seem to communicate with his wife. It seems as though that this marriage is not working. So eventually what happens, the husband either he meets someone, he packs up his bags, and he'll just go. He won't think about whether they've got kids, daughters, sons. He's not bothered about that. He just had enough. He leaves the son, the daughter with his wife, packs his bags, and he goes. Now what eventually happens is that or sometimes what happens is that he then actually kicks her out of the house. Says that, no, I don't want you to be here, you go, leave the house. And what eventually happens is that these young sisters from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, they end up in what we call hostels, or these kind of homes which obviously are not run by Muslims, or like hostels run by Sikhs or Hindus, or basically people from other faiths. That happens, and something else happens, something which is even more worse, is that because some of them have nowhere to live, and also those that they have no money, they start selling themselves on the streets. Okay? They start selling themselves, they become prostitutes, in other words. So this happens and these are Muslims, by the way, they are Muslim sisters. Okay, they're from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Australia. They may not have bought in this country, they may not have given their taxes, whatever, but forget that, they are Muslim sisters, who have been obviously taken advantage. They were brought to this country. Obviously, it was evident to them that husband doesn't want them in the marriage, he kicks them out, he leaves them, they are now by themselves, they don't have any uncles or aunties in the UK to help them. So what happens, they then go, they go onto the streets, sell their body, they start doing other unlawful things, they end up in these hostels and so on, and eventually many of them leave the fold of Islam. Yeah, they leave the fold of Islam because what happens is that when these things happens to people, you start questioning your faith, don't you? Okay, you start questioning your faith, you start saying, he's a Muslim, is that what he did to me? You naturally start questioning your faith. And you then start asking, well, I'm living in Alum Rock, it's a Muslim populated area, but I had no support from the Muslims, I had no support from the masajids and so on. So you then start questioning your faith. And then what happens is that it then leads to that girl or sister becoming or leaving the fold of Islam. Now when you look at it, how did that start? What was the problem here? What was the problem of this breakup of a marriage and people leaving the fold of Islam? It happened when someone, i.e. the parents, forced their son to get married to someone from Pakistan, Bangladesh, someone who was not compatible, which led to this particular downfall. Okay? So what I'm trying to say is that, looking at it from as the question was asked about, there's more dangers in brothers or sisters who have been brought up in this country and they get married to someone who's totally from a different culture. There's a lot of dangers there, and generally speaking, or invariably, such a marriage does break up and does end up in a divorce. Now, during this last part of the question, I used examples of Pakistan, India, Bangladesh because, generally speaking, that normally is applicable for us, so it applies in our society. But what I've realized is that actually the same rule can also be applied for women or for girls or for boys from other cultures. So it doesn't have to be from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. It could be, say, someone from Canada, someone from America. A few years back I went to Canada for Tarawih, so I spent quite a lot of time there in Canada. So I realized that in Canada, the sisters there, their mentality is really, really too, I would say, azad, like too free. They're too modern. I realized the sisters in America, in Canada in particular, they're too modern. They are mainly like women rights. Those pro women rights oriented. They want everything equality. And that's why you hear cases of or stories of women leading prayers in America and Canada and so on. Why? Because they're too much pro-women, rights kind of orientated people. Now again, if a guy who's been brought up in this country, who's done, who comes to the mosque and he knows that obviously women have rights, but they don't have rights of leading the prayers. Women have rights, but they don't have rights of, performing the adhan and so on and so forth. Now he now decides to get married to a woman or a sister from Canada who's totally proper pro, women rights and so on. Again, there's going to be that culture issue, isn't it? There's going to be the clash there. There's going to be a problem there. And obviously the husband here, even though he himself may be intellectual and he may be, very from a high background, but obviously he knows the limits. He knows that, look, obviously women can't, lead prayers. Women can't be mu'adhdins. Women can't do certain things of, prayers and other kind of things which men do. So if he now marries a girl or a sister from Canada or these kind of America, these kind of places, who's proper pro-women rights orientated, then that's going to also lead to problems as well in the nikah and marriage. Okay? So to tell the truth, this last mas'ala or point doesn't really apply just for Pakistan, India or Bangladesh. It applies to women from or brothers from different backgrounds as well, where the mentality is not the same, where you are not on the same wavelength. It will lead to problems and issues. Okay. Now this then takes us on to the next point, or the next slide, and also page 5 and 6 also Obviously page 5, if we have a look at it, the course book just talks about selection of a partner. There are 4 things which we should kind of remember when it comes to choosing a partner. Obviously, the main thing should be deen and taqwa and piety. Now we're going to move on to page 6, and also we're going to be looking at the slides as well with regards to looking at a prospective suitor. So in other words, when we meet someone, then what are the rules, the Islamic rules of meeting a girl for marriage, or a sister meeting a brother for marriage and nikah? What are the rules, what are the regulations which we should adhere to or which we should concentrate on? Now I've just mentioned this hadith here on this slide just to show the importance of meeting someone before marriage and before nikah. Because again, this is another cultural problem we have, is that in some families or in some cultures, they think that, oh, it's unlawful or it's impermissible to see the girl before you get married. Because I know of some brothers, they actually got married without actually seeing the girl. Seriously, they got married without seeing her because their family thought that it was haram to see the girl. I don't know, they got this cultural thing that they think that the only time you can see the wife is on the wedding night or on the wedding day. But before then you can't see her. So you get some people who are very superstitious as well. Some of our, people, unfortunately, they're very superstitious in terms of what they say is that, no, if you see the girl before you get married, it's bad luck. You get some people, unfortunately, like that. So they have these kind of beliefs that it's bad luck or there'll be no barakah in the marriage if you see her. So I mentioned this hadith here just to show that actually it's recommended, it's mustahab, it's a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to see the girl, to see the prospective suitor. Similarly, the girl seeing the brother before marriage is actually a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if you just have a look at this hadith is of Sahih Muslim. So it's an authentic hadith that there was the hadith that a man came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said that he had got married to a woman from the Ansar. Now, who are the Ansar? I'll just very briefly explain. There were 2 kind of groups during Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's time. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not groups in terms of sects, don't get mixed up here. There were ones who were called the Muhajirun. So Muhajirun were those companions who migrated from Makkah to Medina Munawwara with Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like your Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, Hazrat Uthman, Hazrat Ali. And then you had the Ansar, which literally means the helpers, and they were the people of Medina who accepted the Muhajiruns and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with open arms. And I'll just give you an example of how openly they accepted Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions. What I mean by open arms, I don't mean that, when they were coming in, just gave them a hug and a musafaha, that's it, no. They basically told them that all our property will go half off. So, Ansari Sahabi may have had, say 2 lands. He said, you know what, you could take 1. I've got 2 properties, you take 1. And not only that, now this we can never ever imagine, but the Ansar did. They even said that, look, we've got 2 wives, I'll divorce one of them and you could marry them. So no one, okay, fair enough, we could reach that level of, we give our property away. But no one, I think, sitting in this room will ever say that I've got 2 wives, I'll divorce one of them, the one you like, I'll divorce her so that you can have it. No one will do that. That's, our ghayrat will be such that we can't imagine doing that. But the Ansar were ready to do that. So they were the Ansar. So he married a woman from the Ansar, so he goes on to say that Prophet ﷺ said, did you look at her? Have you seen her? So the man said no. So Rasulullah ﷺ said, go and look at her, for there is something in the eyes of the Ansar. What does that mean? There's something in the eyes of the Ansar. In other words, it's mentioned in the commentary that, the Ansari women, the women from Medina, they had blue eyes. And another opinion says that their eyes were like Chinese people. So basically, Prophet ﷺ, he said to that companion who was a muhajir that, look, their eyes here, because they got blue eyes or their eyes are a bit Chinesey, you may find it a bit like off-putting if you just got married and you didn't look at her. So look at her, and then if you like her, then go ahead with it. Otherwise, then don't go ahead with it. Yeah. So that's the meaning of this hadith. For there is something in the eyes of the Ansar. Okay. And also there's another hadith as well about looking at the prospective suitor before nikah marriage, that it produces love between the two. I think this hadith is also in the book as well. Now this is the important part I want to mention. These are some rules about looking at the prospective suitor. Some of these rules are also mentioned in the course book, but obviously more in detail on the slides here. Okay, these are rules really like from a fiqh or a jurisprudence point of view, okay? So let's have a look at rule number 1. There is nothing wrong in looking at someone who one is intending to marry even with desire. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that, just say for example, you want to get married to someone. So you arranged a meeting and you see her, and whilst you're looking at her, you develop some kind of lust in your heart. So what this rule is telling us is that there is nothing wrong if you develop lust. Obviously, if it was a strange woman who you have no intention to marry and you look at her with lust, then that's not allowed. We touched on this at the beginning. But if it's something like you have full intention of marrying her, and whilst looking at her you had some desires, then that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That will be permissible. Now if you could just add that point, what I just mentioned, that if you don't have any intention to marry her, like the two things here. One is you've got intention to marry her, and whilst looking at her, you have desires. That's wrong. Another scenario is that you have no intentions to marry her, then to look at her will be impermissible. Yep. Why? Because there's the danger of lust and so on. I think I may have mentioned a hadith on the next slide, but I'm sure all of you must have read this hadith that one glance is allowed, but not the second one. I'm sure you read this hadith before. So the first glance is allowed, but not the second one. Okay. Now on this point, if you could just add this extra rule on top about these marriage seminars. Marriage seminars meaning where you basically go and meet the girl. Like, those marriage seminars, you call them, or online, singlemuslims.com and these kind of websites and so on. So you go and you get you have a good look at a girl. So what I'm trying to say is that, are they allowed or not? Now, what I want to mention is two things. One is he allowed or not? So obviously, if you just go in with the intention of having a good look at her, then that's not going to be allowed. But the question I want to mention is that, Islamic organizations, should they be doing such a thing? Should they be advocating such a thing? Should they be opening their mosques for these things to happen and so on? Now obviously, nothing wrong in principle. It's a good idea actually, where you get brothers and sisters and they come and they kind of in principle it's a good idea, because you get genuine brothers who want to marry but they can't find someone, and you get genuine sisters who want to marry but they can't find brothers. But the danger of these marriage seminars, if you want to call them, is that it opens up doors for people who have no intention of marrying, but they want to come, they want to meet a girl, want to exchange numbers, flirt, here and there, have a good laugh, and then afterwards move on to the next girl. So if their intention is that, and that's a problem we have with the seminar, because obviously you can't say, oh no, you've got a hat on, yeah, you're genuine. You don't have a hat on, you come here to flirt, haven't you? You get out of the mosque. You can't say that. So what happens is that if you have these marriage seminars, you're going to be inviting other people to come, and then there's a danger that obviously when they are meeting each other, obviously if the girl's parents are not there, or someone like a brother's not there and she's just meeting the boy by herself, then obviously that could lead to, there's many dangers involved. It could lead to them just having a relationship outside marriage. So then what happens is that mosque, which is supposed to be a place where halal things come out from, you're using that as a premises for unlawful things to be advocated. So these are certain things which you should just keep in mind. Obviously, if it's done properly, where the girl's parents need to be there, and so on and so forth, then obviously there could be some level of permissibility. But when it's just like random, the parents are not involved, girls are just coming, meeting boys, boys are just coming in, meeting girls, and just exchanging numbers, and they're texting each other, these kind of things, then obviously that would not be something allowed or permissible. Okay, rule number 2 is that it is not permitted to touch the face and hands of the woman even when one does not feel desire, for there is no real need for that. So in other words, when you are meeting the girl, you can't touch her hands. You can't say, oh, can I just have a feel of your hands and so on. You can't because there's no need. What do you want to feel her hands for? You could do that after you get married. But obviously, before marriage, there's no need for you to obviously touch her hands, to touch her face, and so on. Obviously, she will show, like if you look at rule number 3, obviously she will show her hands and her face. So in other words, even though the sister may be, doing niqab, obviously if she wants to get married to a person, obviously having the niqab is not going to help the guy decide whether he wants to get married to her, because you don't know what's underneath the niqab. So in that case, she have to obviously take off the niqab, and obviously he could then obviously see her face and obviously see her hands as well. So these are the 2 body parts the man or the boy can look at, the face and the hands. Does anybody know the wisdom behind that? Why the face and the hands? Why can't you look at some other parts of the body? Why the 2 in particular? Why the face, you reckon? Because
the hijab for Muslim women is closed from head to toe except the face and hands.
Yeah. And also the face, you could then determine her beauty, isn't it? So you see the face, then you determine the beauty, because as I mentioned on the previous slide, beauty is a very important part in the nikah, isn't it? Because generally speaking, naturally, you'll want someone who's pious, but also you want the girl who you're marrying to be, slightly attractive, isn't it? Attractive to you. Obviously, may not be attractive to anybody else, but come for you, she needs to be attractive. So obviously, beauty is very important. So obviously, you look at her face to determine the beauty, and the face, and the hands. Why is she allowed to expose the hands? Because from the hands we can then see her color of her skin and the fairness of her skin, and also her weight as well. If you've got big hands, then you know that there's a problem here. If it's smaller hands, then obviously you can get away with it. Okay. Rule number 4. This is the other way around, like a woman. So obviously, the first 3 rules we're looking at it more from a man's point of view. For a woman, it's actually more important that she looks at the man properly. Okay. For boys, when they look at a girl, then obviously they don't have to. They could get away with it if they don't see her properly. But for girls in particular, if she wants to get married, then she needs to look at the boy properly. Why properly? Because I mentioned there is that, alright, just say for example the husband doesn't like her for some reason, he's able to get out of the marriage easily. In other words, because he's got the right to divorce his wife. So he could give his wife talaq and divorce, and he could move on, even though he shouldn't for petty reasons, but he could get out of the nikah and the marriage. But as you know, a woman cannot do that because she doesn't have the rights of talaq. So in other words, she could get stuck in a marriage if she got married and she didn't like the person, she didn't look at the person properly, his looks were all that. then in that situation, it's actually more important that she gets married. Before she gets married, that she looks at the person properly. Which then takes me on to the next point, the next slide. These are just some questions. I mentioned this before, so this is quite important. These are some questions which you can ask. Again, those who are not married, they always ask this question that, or Mufti Sahib, Maulana Sahib, what question do we ask when we meet? Now, obviously, this is more advice for the brothers and the sisters. Okay, what we do, we'll just stop now, because I think they want to do the Zuhr Adhan, so we'll have an early lunch. Okay, just a couple of questions which the sisters asked from upstairs earlier. The first question, I've got actually doubts whether a sister asked you or not. It's about polygamy. So I'm thinking probably one of the brothers probably asked you, and then they just put the sister's name down. But anyway, well, obviously, I was told this from a sister, that could you please touch on the topic of polygamy? So basically, this topic of polygamy, I'll mention it, I'll mention in detail, because there's a section we're going to look at with regards to those women whom it is unlawful to marry and those women who you can marry. So in that particular section, I'll touch on the topic of polygamy, and obviously the question the sister asked is that why is it so looked down upon when it is a sunnah? So I'll touch on it later about that question. Also, a similar question which I'm going to look at it later on as well, is that what is better, lawful wives or unlawful girlfriends? So again, that's more from a polygamy point of view, that nowadays is considered to be the norm or accepted, that the wife doesn't want her husband to marry another woman, but she's totally and perfectly fine with the husband having a mistress or having a girlfriend. She's totally fine with that. So inshallah, we'll touch on that under that particular section as well. Regarding what we just discussed now, question which your brother asked, that if a woman is not in hijab, how can a brother measure her piety over her wealth, rank and beauty? Because I mentioned that when it comes to marriage or nikah, you should look at piety. That's the main thing. But just say, for example, he's gone to meet a sister and this sister is not wearing a hijab. So how then do we derive whether she is pious or not? Now the answer which I want to give is that it's mentioned in a hadith that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that when Allah created human beings, He created people who are sa'id. Sa'id means those who are good people, are inherently they're good. And He's also created shaqi, i.e. wretched people, in other words, those who are inherently bad. Now the question, or the answer I want to give is that, just say you met someone, whether a sister has met a brother, and just say the brother, from his appearance, he doesn't seem as though that he's practicing. Or a brother has met a sister, and from her appearance, it seems as though that she's not practicing. Now it doesn't mean that you just forget about her, say, okay, I don't want to go ahead with it. We look at, inshallah, when you should ask her some questions. You ask her some questions and you find out how she is. What could happen is that actually she is sa'id. In other words, that she's actually a good person at heart. But obviously, though, because of one reason or the other, she's not practicing. But by asking her questions, you derive that actually, no, she's a very good person. So then you could think about, she's not wearing the hijab, but I'll get married to her, then I'll work on it. And similarly, the other way around, that there may be a sister who's thinking of getting married. She's met a guy, from his appearance, he doesn't seem as though that he's practicing, but when the sister was asking question, in fact, she found out actually the guy, he's actually a good guy, he's decent, and actually I could actually work on it. So just because they're not wearing the hijab, or just because the guy doesn't have a beard, or he doesn't have a topi, or he's not wearing a kameez, we shouldn't think, oh no, these people are bad people, let's not get involved with them. No, just obviously speak to them, ask these questions, which we're going to look at after Salah, inshallah. Ask these questions, determine that actually, is she pious, is he pious, and then obviously if you think that there's some there's something you can hold on to, that you can work on, then obviously you should go ahead with it. Okay, so that's the answer to that particular question, that if a woman is not in hijab, it doesn't mean that, oh, she's not practicing. If there's something there you could work on, then obviously you should go ahead with it. So that concludes the second session. After the Salah, after lunch, we will make it start the third section. After that one,
Oh